Beginning our Daf Mesechta Nedarim Daf Ches, we begin on the bottom line of Zayin Beis, continuing with another teaching from Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. We had mentioned him regarding the halacha of our Mishnah. We spoke about the last case of the Mishnah was Menuda Nilacha, which was one of the Yadas, one of the partial statements, and we got into discussion regarding the word Menuda. Does it mean Nidoi? Does it mean Shamta? And Machlekes regarding in their Machlekes. So once we spoke about Nidui, we spoke about other halachas regarding Nidui, and that the Gemara continues. And the last teaching was the Gilma Rav that the Talmud Chacham could be not allowed to make allowed. Now the Gemara continues with another teaching from the same of Gilma Rav in a related vein regarding the laws of Shavuos and the Dharma. Today's daf. Something that is discussed in today's daf are nishboyin lekaimas mitzvah. There's an idea that although we generally frown upon making a shvua, but one could take an oath if it's there to fulfill a mitzvah. Additionally, what happens if someone says, Ashkem ve'eshkem perek zeh, and they get up and I'm going to learn this perek, what the halachic ramifications of making such a statement is. Nido b'chaloim, what happens if in his dream, he dreamt that they put him in chayrim, what is the halachas he has to have based on that? The question of Baal Mao She'as Shlich L'charotzes Ishtik, could a husband be an agent for his wife's regret? Generally, the person who made the neder has to come to the bezdin, to the rab, and say, okay, whatever, I didn't mean to, I am charota. Could the husband be that shliach? And a person is not allowed to permit a neder in the place where his rebbe is, even though he himself is a rab. But an excommunication he's allowed to permit even in the place of his rebbe. And some of the concepts in today's daf are inshbul chala shvua, which is that once you have an oath, another oath cannot take effect. And very simply is because a shvua is on the person. The person already is forbidden to do this thing. Another shvua cannot take effect on that pre-existing shvua. So begin the current daf. The ches, the bottom line is Zayin on the base. Last few words is another teaching. Ve'amar of Gilma Rav. We just quoted him just before with one halacha. I think Gemara quotes him with another related but unrelated type of halacha. So as the Gemara continues to talk about ches medalv, minayin shenishboyin lekayim es mitzvah. From where do we know that a person could take a shvua to fulfill a mitzvah? Like the Rush explains, what the question is that we're not concerned that maybe he's going to come to a stumbling block and he's going to violate his oath. Again, generally we frown upon shvuas. From where do we know that when it comes to a mitzvah, we do make take an oath to perform the mitzvah? It's a pasuk in Tehillim. The David HaMelech says, "Nishbati va'akayema." I swear and I'll fulfill. Lishmar mishpatei tzidkecha, to safeguard the judgments of your righteousness. Where we see this idea of taking a shvua to fulfill the mitzvahs. Now, the assumption of the Gemara is that Rav Gidl is coming to tell us that the oath is going to take effect on the dvar mitzvah. Again, there's many ways I've explained these Gemaras in general. In generally, we have Rashi who gives us a very straight way. But in these dafim, the Ran will explain one way and some of the Rishonim will explain a different way. But the way the Ran explains it is that the assumption of the Gemara is that the teaching of Rav Gidl is telling you that a shvua will take effect on dvar mitzvah like a dvar rishus. And that's what we're proving from the pasuk Nishbati va'akayema, that you see that an oath can take effect on a dvar mitzvah, just like you take an oath to do or not to do something involuntary, that's volitional. Therefore, the Gemara asks, what do you mean? A person that already has a power of an oath, already that's pre-existing from Har Sinai, we took a shvua that we're going to keep the Tarek mitzvahs. So, therefore, ein shvua Chala al Shvua could be one way of saying it, but the Ran says that the Gemara in Shavuos of Chavzayin Medalv says, when it says in the pasuk regarding what's called a Shavuos bitui, which is the oath of if you're going to do or not do something, it says lahara or lahativ, to do or not to do. That's talking about b'dvar harishus and not by dvar mitzvah. And for lack of confusion, there's more to say in the Ram, but al kapanim. The question is, what are you teaching me with Nishbati va'akayemo? One way of saying it is that, well, there's no Isser Bal Yachal if he violates the Shvuah because it's Mushba Ba'oimim B'Har Sinai. So it's Ein Shvuah Chala Shvuah, however you want to say it. The Gemara is asking, how can you take a Shvuah on the Dvar Mitzvah? So the Gemara says, no, this is what we're coming to tell you, is the Shori Le'inish Le'zruzi Nafshe, that a person is allowed to go ahead and make himself with zrizis to make himself diligent. In other words, the Ran explains what the Gemara is saying is, from where do we know that it's appropriate for a person to swear to fulfill a mitzvah, and that even upstanding individuals who generally hold back from taking a shvuah, that they could take such a shvuah. That's what it's saying. In other words, David HaMelech did the same thing, like the Rush explains. It's not considered mentioning God's name in vain if you're swearing with God's name. Now, even if you take an oath even without God's name, you would also think to say it would be forbidden, because you don't want to get a person accustomed to taking oaths and has come to swear on regarding other things. That's the chiddush of this halacha. That again, either the question is that what are you saying with nishbati v'akayema, or it's ain't shvuah chala shvuah, and that's the Gemara saying that no, it's the person who's just being mezaras himself. It's not considered as saying unnecessarily God's name. Another teaching from Amr of Gidl Amr Rav says, someone says, I'm going to get up and I'm going to learn this parak. Or Eshkem Mesechta gets inspired, goes to see Mashas, and like, okay, I'm going to learn this Mesechta. So says Rav Gidl Rav, Neder Godel Neder Lalikei Yisrael. A great Neder he has taken as a Neder to the God of the Jewish people. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? Well, he's already has an oath from the halacha of one of the mitzvahs in the Torah of learning Torah, and the oath doesn't take effect on a pre-existing oath. In other words, the way the Ran explains, although most definitely you said neder gadol, you don't mean a neder. Most definitely you mean an oath, because you explicitly use the terminology of an oath when you said eshna perek zeh, that I'm going to learn this perek. Because a neder is something that takes effect on the cheftza. It's something from the object that's forbidden on him. That you never have by something that you're going to do. Obviously, if it's an action, it's the personality himself. Like we find many times that we call a shvuah neder, as we see in the Mishnah later on next Daf and Daf Tes, al kaponim. That's why the Gemara is asking. Obviously, what you're saying is a shvuah, but an oath cannot take effect on an oath for a carbon, because from the fact that you're saying neder gadol sounds like it has all the halachas of the shvuah. And if you're going to tell me my kamashma like we just said before, oh, you're right, it's not a shvuah, because the shvuah cannot take effect on the shvuah. So what are you saying? It's the afilas duzi be'alma. It's even just to go ahead and just make yourself bizrizes. And that's why he's saying neder gadol neder. In other words, that it's a very praiseworthy neder, and it's appropriate to do this, like we just said in the previous halacha, that you should be nishbal l'kaimas a mitzvah. That's all Rav Gidl Rav meant when he says that. If someone says, "Oh, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna learn this mesechta," that it's not a real shvuah, it's just a mizarsim. But then says the Gemara Rav Gidl Kamaisa. This is the same thing as the first halacha of Rav Gidl. Why is he saying two halachas for the same idea when it's not a real shvuah? Because in shvuah chala shvuah, because you already took a shvuah in Har Sinai, you're going to keep all the Torah mitzvahs. So what's the novelty of this second teaching regarding learning versus all the mitzvahs? So the Gemara says no. There's a specific chiddush in this halacha. Hakamash Malan. What he's teaching us over here is that actually the oath does take effect. How could it take effect? What do you mean? Torah already tells you have to learn Torah. Talmud Torah is one of the mitzvahs. So the chiddush is kiven di boy poten nafshi b'kriyas mashachas arba. Since if he wanted to, he could have exempted himself from the halacha of gisa b'yom of learning day and night. He could have fulfilled it by saying Kriyishma in the morning, Kriyishma at nighttime. Therefore, the shvuah is going to take effect when he's saying, now I'm going to learn Masechtas Nadarim. Now I'm going to learn this perek. That's something that he didn't have to necessarily do, and therefore, that's why the shvuah could take effect. Now, the Ran says, it seems to me, he says, that not really precise that a person could really get himself off the hook the mitzvah learning Torah by saying Kriyishma in the morning and nighttime. Because he says, and these are important words that everyone has to know, a person has to learn constantly, day and night, kafi kaichai, according to his ability. As the Gemara says in the first paragraph of Lamed Amar, it says in the pasuk in Shema b'shinantam. What does that mean? The words of Torah have to be sharp in your mouth. If someone asks you something, you can't mumble, you can't pause, but you have to tell them right away. So obviously, if all you're doing your whole life is saying Kriyishma in the morning, Kriyishma at nighttime, that's not enough. Rather, says the Ram, from here to me, it seems a proof, what I wrote elsewhere in Perek Shvur Shtem Basra, that anything that's learned out from a drasha, even if it's biblical, since it's not explicit in the pasuk, an oath can take effect on it. And that's what the Gemara is saying over here. Since if he wants to, he could let himself off the hook from what it says explicitly in the pasuk, b'shach b'chov kumecha, when you go to sleep, when you get up in the morning, with krishma and the morning and nighttime. That's why shvu could take effect even for the halachas of a korban, and that's why saying neder gadol nodar. In other words, for all its halachas, literally like a dvar rishos, even though it's not true biblically, you are chayiv to learn day and night, and therefore taking a neder to learn the Masechta shvu should not take effect, because you have to be learning day and night, at least kafi koichay. Yes, there are piturim, there's exemptions, masafta de genecha, if you have to get a parnasa, or whatever it is that's there to help you further your learning. But it's not like you really could just say Shama, Shachas, V'Arvis. You have to learn Yom B'Layla. It's just because it's not explicitly in the pasuk. That's why a shvu could take effect on that. Another teaching related from Megillah Merav says, someone says to his friend, Nashkim v'nishna perek zeh. Let's get up and let's learn this perek. A guy, you need a buddy system. Sometimes the Chavrusa says, let's, me and you, let's learn a little bit. Chitas or a chak or whatever this and that. Let's get up. Let's do this. So Allah lahashkim. It's on him to get up early. What is this saying? What the Ran explains is that since he said to his friend, the Rav gave a fiery drasha and he's inspired and he says, you know what? Let's go ahead and learn this thing. But since he said to his friend, let's get up, he accepted on himself that he's going to be the ma'or b'davar. He's going to be the one to be the spark behind this. Just like right now, he was the one that was being ma'or, awakening this idea. So the Ran says there's actually two chidushim in this halacha. First of all, that just by accepting upon oneself to do dvar mitzvah, that's effective, because what the terminology he said over here, he didn't mention any neder or shvuah, and even though with just words, it's sufficient. Similar to what we say, that just accepting upon oneself that tzedakah is going to require you to give tzedakah, like it says, beficha zu tzedakah. And something is for any dvar mitzvah. That's one chiddush. Just telling your friend, come, let's go learn, it's already like a shvuah. And second of all, is that Allah lahashkim, that he has to be the one to get the chavrusa, to get him to wake up, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu did, as the Gemara brings Shanim, like it says the pasuk in Yechezkel. It says, "V'yom alai," that it said to me, Hashem said to me, "Kum tzei labika," get up, go out to the valley, v'sham adaba isach, and there I'm going to speak with you, etc. V'eitzei labika, and the Navi says, I went out to the valley, and v'hinei, behold, sham kavod Hashem, and there the glory of Hashem was standing. Meaning, Hashem was already there from before. So Hashem is the one that gets up, tells, let's go do this, and Hashem is already waiting. Therefore, that's when someone says to his friend, says to his chavrusa, says, okay, let's go learn this. That it's two things. One, that's already mechayev him. Therefore, people should always be saying, believe that. It's already mechayev him in that obligation. And second of all, that he should be the one that should be constantly being the alternator, trying to get that battery to get started. He has to take responsibility for the chavrusa. Now, going back to the topic of the previous daf, which was what got us started with all these teaching of Megillah Merav, which was the halacha of nidui, because we had spoken about menuda nilucha, which was the case of yadis of machlekes, if that's a neder or not. So Rav Yosef, he says nido b'chalai. Let's say someone had a dream that in his dream he was put into chayrim. So tzarich yud b'nei adam lahatula. So he needs 10 people to be matir the chayrim, because maybe that it was through the agency of Hashem that he was put into chayrim, and therefore he needs 10 people to permit it, where you have the shechina with 10 people. So therefore, that's why a lot of people have Erev Rosh Hashanah, they have a minyan of people. At Mutalov, you have to have the 10 people say, right? You have to run the paper, those who don't know it. And Mutalov, you get 10 people to permit the nidui. Now, but there's two different girsais. But Behuda Tanu Hilchasa. The first gears that the Ram brings down is actually Behuda Masnu Halach Hilchasa. In other words, you have to get those who teach others of a Masnu V'Leitanu, which his gear says Aval Tanu. But if it's only someone who learns himself, then that's not effective. That's not so chasher. You have to have someone who teaches others, not someone who just learns. But then he says the girsa, like our girsa is no. You have to get someone the Tanu Hilchasa. Tanu Hilchasa means he learns Gemara. That's someone who could be mat to the neder, but if they're only masnu, which means they learn all the mishnayos, then that's not going to be effective. Someone learns Gemara, is what's necessary. Now, so what do you do if you don't have someone who learns Gemara and like we said, then you could have even someone that just learns Mishnayos. What happens if you don't have even not someone who learns Gemara, not someone who learns Mishnayos, and to go ahead and be matir the Nidrim? You live out somewhere in Wyoming and there is no one who's learning Gemara and Mishnayos. Lazy, what you should do is you should go and sit by the crossroads, and you go ahead and you greet 10 people. Now, since they go and they say Salom, so that's going to protect him from the afflictions, because he had 10 people saying Shalom to him, until he gathers to a place where there's 10 people who learn Gemara, then he could go ahead and be matir the nidui, the chayrim with a million people. Related discussion, says the Gemara, Amle Ravinu Ravashi says, what happens if Yodaman Shamte? What happens if a person knows who put him a chayrim in the dream? Mao delishule, what's the halacha if he could go ahead and permit it? Because generally, whoever makes the nidui, he could undo the nidui. As the Gemara says, he says, "Oh, go to him that he'll permit it because he's the one that put you in chayrim." So what happens if, in the dream, a person saw this chacham who had put him into chayrim? Could he go to that chacham and say, "Hey, I'm mevakesh, be matir the nidui"? Amalei said to him, "No, l'shamute shav yishlich." Maybe from Shemayim they only made him an agent to put him into chayrim. Maybe to permit they never appointed him a shlich. So you can't go to the chacham even though you saw him in the dream, and even though he put you in chayrim, you can't go ahead and have him undo it. So Amalei Ravashi says, whatever shamte b'shorli b'chal memai. What happens if in the dream itself the chacham had put him into chayrim, and later in the dream he undid the chayrim? What's halacha now with that person's status? So Amalei said to him, "Shem she efshalabar b'lei tevin." Just like it's not possible that you won't have grain without any chaff, which that's the outer husks of the grain, and there's always some of this. You buy oatmeal, even our high quality oatmeal. You're gonna be eating oatmeal once in a while. You're gonna get that, that fadarb and that chaff over there. It's like so for sure in Talmudic times, it's not possible not to have some of the green without some of the chaff. So as the Gemara continues on the base, so it is not possible to have a dream without things that are vain, that are void. As the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, Asher itoy chaloim umala teven esabar, and what does grain have with the chaff? To tell us that the dream is similar to that idea, that essentially what he was saying was, as the Rosh says, maybe the hatara of the nidui was the dvar b'telim. So you can't go ahead and say that you don't have chayrim. Maybe that was the words that were void. Now, the Ram brings down that he wants to know that if someone is put into nidui in his dream, now usually you're going to end up dreaming about this, so just be careful now. Usually what you think about. So what happens if someone is put into nidui in his dream? Does he have to conduct himself with all the halachas of a menuda, of nidui? So it says logical to me that even though we say over here that someone that was put in nidui in his dream, he needs to have hatara, he has to undo that, but you cannot learn out from here to someone that has a neder in his dream. What happens if, let's say, in the dream, he's making a neder? I promise that whatever, this and that. That it's not, that it doesn't mean that we have to have a heter, because here the reason is that you could say that from Shemayim, they put him into nidui. Whereas by neder, you have to say it yourself. So if you're dreaming that you did it, that's not necessarily that you're going to be obligated because of what you dreamed regarding yourself. But he says, I saw by the Rashba in the Tshuva that there was such a story that came in front of him, and he required a hataras nadarim for someone who dreamt that they took a neder in their dream. So regarding the nidui, he says tzarchian, if you would have to have all the halachas of menuda, and also we're going to make a neder, seems to be machlekes rishonim, if you would actually be obligated to be matir your neder that you made in a dream. Now the Gemara brings a story related to this halacha regarding being matir the nedarim, or a nidui, depending on the girsa actually. Ravina havali nidru lebesur. One girsa says that his wife had a neder, some have a girsa that she was a nidui. But be that as it may, it seems like it's that of Nidra, Asli Kamid Ravashi. He came in front of Ravashi, Amalei, so he said to him, Bal Marshi Asa Shlich Lecharotzes Ishtay. What's halacha? Could a husband be an agent for his wife's regret? Now, the Ram brings from the Rambam and Hilchos Shavuos that the question is specifically regarding the husband, because the husband is like the wife, but someone else obviously cannot be a shliach because the halacha is that the one who took the neder has to be in front of the ones who are being mat to the neder. So the question was specifically regarding ishtay, because the baal is ke'ishtay. So we want to know, could he be the agent for the wife's regret? So Malay, so he said to him, even the husband, it depends. If they are gathered, then yes, and Eloi, loy. If they're not gathered, not. So, and that's the way the Rush explains it. It's only if you find them already gathered, then they could be an agent. But if he has to gather the dayanim, then not. Why? So the Ran explains the reason is because even though we say that ishtay kugufay, that the wife is like his body, they weren't lenient by the husband only where they're already gathered. But to initially go ahead and he has to go get the rabbanim, then no. Why? Because since we say it's clear that the one that takes the neder has to be there, which as he says the Shita Rambam, Tesi says the opposite. They say to the contrary. They say by a regular person it's obvious that he actually could be a shliach. By the husband was specifically our question. Why? And this is the main point that the Ran is stressing. That is because we're concerned that since his wife's vows are hard for him, he might increase and exaggerate her regret. So that was the question. So again, we have a Machlikas Rishonim, Rambam and Taisus, where the Ram brings it. What's halacha? Why are we asking regarding the husband? What's with other people? Either for sure other people for sure could do it, like Taisus says, or no, to the contrary, like the Ram says only the husband could do it. Like other people, the one that makes the neder has to be there. So it's no shliach shalom kamaisa. Question is regarding the husband, he might exaggerate the charata, and that's what the Gemara comes out that if they're gathered already, then it's okay. If not. The reason for that is because if he has to gather them, it's a tircha for him, it's an effort. So, meaning if they're gathered already, it's not a tircha, so we're not concerned that maybe he's going to add on to regret. But if he has to go through the effort of gathering them, so there's 2 points. First of all, he's bothered the fact that you took an neder in the first place. Moreover, that he has to go through the effort of getting the rabbanim, now he's already over the top already, and we're concerned. But someone else, since he doesn't care if it's going to be permitted or not, so we're not concerned, and therefore, then for sure he could go ahead and be an agent for the woman. So says the Gemara, Shmamad Atlas. What we can infer from this story is 3 things. First of all, Shmamad, we can infer from this that Baal Nas is shliach lacharotzes ishtay, like we said. A husband can become an agent for his wife's regret. Again, Machlekes Rishonim is that even a husband or only a husband. Vishmamana, and also we learn from this that Leishari Lamishra Nidra Ba'asa Dirabe, that a person cannot permit a neder in the location of where his teacher is, because if not, Ravina had been the one that was his wife, that he had asked this question from his Rebbe Ravashi. If not, he would have permitted himself the neder of his wife. Now, the Ran finds that difficult. How could he have done that? The Mishnah Masechta Nadarim teaches that a person could look at any nega to say if it's a nega or not, except for nigei atma, except for his own negoim. Meir says also he cannot look at the negoim of his relative. That a person can be mater own nedarim except for his own nedarim. It really says not even in the nedarim of his wife that it's related to their intimate life. And it's obvious from the Yerushalmi, the Allah is like a Yehuda, that a person cannot be mater the nedarim of his wife. So what are you telling me, that you're proving that a person cannot be mater in Nedarim Makom Rabbi from the fact that Ravina didn't do it, and he asked Ravashi, but because Ravina himself is a Rav, but it's his wife, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that a person cannot be mater in the Ishtay. So how are you proving it regarding the Rebbe? So says the Ran, even so you could say that with others he's allowed to permit it, if not for the honor of his Rebbe. Because the Mishnah B'cheres teaches that all B'cheres a person can look at to see if the B'cher has a blemish or not, except for his own B'cher. And even so, the Gemara says over there that he could combine with two other regular people. So, therefore, although you cannot look at it yourself, but you would be able to do it with others, and Ravina therefore would have been able to matter his neder of his wife, if not for the honor of his Rebbe. Or, even if you want to say that no, here it's different because Ishtik and Gufay, and maybe he would not be able to even combine with others, because it would be like his own neder, because it's like Ishtik and Gufay, it's not like just a regular relative. Even so, says the Ran, if not for the honor of his Rebbe, Ravina would have told his own students to be matter. The fact that he didn't do this, obviously it's not appropriate to be matter the neder in a place where your Rebbe is. So even though he wouldn't have done it himself, he would have told his Talmidim.
1 versus 3. Where do we know the difference between 1 versus 3? 1 Rav versus 3 Rabbanim.
Oh, how can it be? Yeah, he doesn't explain exactly. He just says that you see from that Gemara over there that even though you're not allowed to be mati your own b'chayr, but we see, he says from the Gemara over there that you could combine the two others, and therefore there would be a way to do it, just not yourself. And the reason why, very simply, is because the person is biased when it comes to himself, if it's based on svara. But when you have two others, so then you're not even derived, so then we wouldn't have that necessarily that bias. That's the second halacha. And B'Shmamina, and the third halacha we learn from this story is keeping confident. If the Rabbanim were already gathered, then Shabbatami, then it's okay for the husband to be shliach in the neder ishtay, because he doesn't have to go through the effort of gathering them. They've already been there. But if he has to gather, again, it's too much on his plate, and then he might exaggerate the charata. Now, B'Shamta, on the other hand, regarding a nidui, if someone's a chayrim, that's different than a neder. So although we said a neder person should not be mati b'makom rabbi, there regarding a shamta, rabbi, even in the location of his rabbi, you are allowed to go ahead and be matur, as Taisa explains. Because sometimes the Rav is not going to be there and is not going to be available, and you shouldn't push off permitting a shamta, because by a neder is not such a big deal if you push off being matur the neder, and the neder is there until the Rav is ready to be matur. But a shamta, you don't want to delay it on a person for even one moment, and therefore even b'mokum rabbi, a person is allowed to go ahead and be matur that shamta. Another additional halacha is v'yachid mumcha, an individual that's a professional. Shari Shamti, he could go ahead and permit a cherem, which the Ram points out, this halacha is not learned out from the previous incident that we mentioned. It's just that once we're mentioning that a person should not be matur neder where his Rebbe is, so we say that, however, Shamti you're allowed to, and then once we talk about Shamta, we say that an individual who's a professional, he's allowed to go ahead and permit a Shamta. Now, going back again to the theme of the previous stuff of the Zayin Beis, where we had mentioned a halacha that whoever's masker shem shemayim levatala, someone mentions God's name in vain, that there's an obligation to put him into nidur, like we said, because sham oini, sham misa, you have an obligation to put that person acherim. So related to that, the Gemara brings Amar B'Shimon bar Zvid, Amar B'Yitzchak bar Tavla, Amar B'Chia Aricha, Debei Rab Acha, Amar B'Zeira, Amar B'Laza, Amar B'Chanina, Amar B'Yasha, Mishmeid B'Yud bar Lai. Again, the Gersa Messiah there. Ma'adir Siv, what does it mean the pasuk in Malachi? It says, V'zarcha lechem, that it will shine for you, Yirei Shemi, those who fear my name, Shemesh Tzedakah B'Gomer, a son of charity, etc. So what is this referring to? Elu b'nei Adam, these are people, Shem Yireyin Lahoitzi, Shem Shemayim Levatala. These are those people that are afraid to say out God's name in vain. That's Yirei Shemi. They're afraid of my name. They're not going to say God's name in vain. That's the pasuk continues, Shemesh Tzedakah Umarpe, a son of charity and healing, which the pasuk there continues, Bichnofeha, in its wings. And Omar Abaye says, Shema Mino, we learn from this pasuk of Shemesh Tzedakah Umarpe, that it sounds like the sun is healing. It's Shema Mino, because it says Shemesh Tzedakah, the sun is charity and it's healing. Shema Mino Charga D'Yoma. What's Charga D'Yoma? It's like the dust that you see in the sun when it comes through a window. So you look and you see these, whatever it is, whether it be the particles and you think your eyes are starting to play tricks on you, whatever, but there's some of these particles in the day. Masi, that's healing. You see, because the Shemesh is Marpe. Which Replete Reb Shimon Lakish, that actually disagrees with Reb Shimon Lakish. Why? I mean, he says a different idea. He says, Ein Gehenim Lo'el Mabo. Says, there's no Gehenim in the world to come. Now the Girsa of the Ran seems to be La'asa Lava in the future, whether that's different or not. But he says it doesn't mean after a person dies. Most definitely there is Gehenna for the wicked people. Rather, what we mean to say is like our Girsa in Olam Haba, after Tchias HaMesim, after God will bring back the dead, those who are wicked, they're going to be in a state of disgrace and of destruction forever, like it says in Daniel. They're not going to get judged in Gehenna. Ella, rather, it's going to be the following judgment. Kadosh Baruch Hu, what he's going to do is Moitzichama Minar Tikah. He's going to take the sun out from its sheath, as we all know this terminology from next week's parashah. Avraham Avinu wanted some guests, and Hashem took the sun out of its sheath. It was boiling hot. No one was coming. So in the future, that's what Hashem is going to do. He's going to take the sun out from its sheath, which is its container, so to speak, and tzaddikim mishapen ba, and the righteous are going to get healed with it. And Rishoim Nedarim Daf, and the wicked are going to get judged with the sun. Like it says in the pasuk, "V'zarcha lechem yirei shemi," that's going to shine for you those who fear my name. Shemesh v'goymer, the sun is going to be tzedakah, and it's going to be marpeh, it's going to be healing. V'lo'oid, not only that, and they're going to even get delight in it. Like it says in the end of the pasuk, you're going to go out, ufish them, and you're going to flourish, ke'egli marbek, like the calves of the stall. But the wicked are going to get judged with the sun. Like it says in the pasuk before that. The pasuk before says, behold, the day is coming. It's burning like a furnace, etc. And what does the pasuk say over there? That all those sinners, and all those who do wickedness are going to be kash, going to be straw. And it's going to burn on them this day, coming day. Hashem by God. So what the Gemara is telling us is that how to translate how to translate Shemesh Tzedakah Marpeh. What is that talking about? Abai says it's in today's times that the sun, these little sawdust of the sun, that's healing. Shem Malach says a different shot. No, Shemesh Tzedakah Marpeh is actually going on Olam Haba. That's a very important lesson. That Olam Haba is the same thing for the wicked as it is for the righteous. The same thing. God will take out the sun and it's going to shine. If a person is healthy and robust, the sun will be healing for him. If a person has flaws, it's going to be the greatest Gehenna for him, like the idea they say that Olam Haba is seeing the perfect you. And if you see the way you look now as you see it over there, that's the ultimate pleasure that a person will get. If you see something very different, that's going to be the ultimate diroin, cherpen, olam. So that's what he's saying over here. The same sun will be, Hashem will use that and say, okay, let's see who's healthy, who's not. I'll play the video. If it looks exactly like the video of how this world was, then that's going to be the ultimate pleasure. And if not, that's going to be the ultimate bad. And let's all be zeicha to have that beautiful video showing all our good. Thank you very much.